In our world, with the saturation of media everywhere, with the boom of technology, we are constantly assaulted with sexual images, whether we like it or not, whether we're looking for them or not. The problem is, even for Christian young men that are trying to keep their heart pure and they feel like they're battling against it, it's still impacting our souls. A quick glance turns into a lingering stare and becomes much, much more. Now, in today's video, I'm going to tell you the story of Samson and Delilah. We're going to learn a lot from Samson and his mistakes that he made, and it's going to become very, very clear how we need to stay away and the danger of digital Delilahs. Now, the story begins, as it usually does, with Samson's mom and dad. Now, they wanted a child, but they couldn't have one. They were barren. But God said this to them: "For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines." Now, during this time, the Philistines have the Israelites captive, right? The Israelites are under their rule. Israel didn't have a king at this time. They had judges, and Samson was appointed and chosen as one of those judges. Now, for those of you who were wondering what the Nazarite vow is what Samson was sworn to when he was first born, it goes something like this. The first thing is abstinence from wine and strong drink, and this symbolizes the separation from worldly pleasures and a focus on spiritual matters. The second thing was no cutting of hair. Well, this is very famous for Samson because everyone, would say that his power came from his hair. The truth is more so that, God, the power came from God because of the fact that he was in this kind of agreement with Samson that he would behave this way, that he would act in accordance with what God had, commanded when he was first born. And so God gave him this strength. This was from him. But the no cutting of hair symbolizes his set apartness, essentially, the fact that he's, committed to God. And the third thing, which is interesting to me, I haven't heard this, is the avoidance of contact with dead bodies. And, dead bodies back in that day too were very unclean. So it would make you kind of an unclean person. This is not something that you want to associate with. And so Samson, he wasn't going to do that. Now, although most people know his ultimate failure, right, which we'll get to that, few recognize that the compromises that he made early on had more of an impact than you could possibly imagine. And this begins kind of our first point, which is he compromised his boundaries. He compromised his boundaries. What did he do? Well, some people don't even realize, but, in chapter 14 of Judges, he married a Philistine woman. This was obviously very not okay. And although God used it sovereignly for his purposes, this was still something that God commanded against. The other piece was he slept with a prostitute. This is in chapter 16. But he didn't come back in repentance. He didn't kind of learn from these mistakes because there was no consequences. And I think us too, when we sin and we compromise our boundaries, but there's no real consequences, we can begin to convince ourselves that it's not a big deal. And I think that's what Samson did here. My question for us is, where have we, like Samson, compromised our boundaries? Where have we let things slip and then been affirmed when there was no consequences to continue on in that path? There's a real temptation to feel like secret sin is safe sin. Just because it's secret, it's not hurting anyone, so it's safe. But this is what it says in Proverbs: "Whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy." In Numbers, it says, "But if you fail to do this, you will be sinning against the Lord, and you may be sure that your sin will find you out." Now, we'll jump back into Samson in a second, but I want to take a break here just to say, what boundaries can we make sure that we're establishing and holding to that will protect us from temptation and falling into temptation? There are just some easy things, because we're talking about the digital sphere and being discerning about that. Deleting social media apps that are tempting for you. Being honest with yourself about that. Man, that might mean deleting social media. And I know, hey, you might not be able to watch my videos. That's okay. Go over to Spotify or Apple Music. Listen to them on there. You'll be okay. And also, you don't really need my videos anyway, but, you can do that. Another thing is you can live with friends that can keep you accountable. Maybe you're living by yourself right now, and that temptation feels really strong because isolation is dangerous. It just is. Another piece to that is get busy. Isolation is dangerous, and also being by yourself and having nothing to do, boredom is dangerous. Purpose and meaning and things to do, they make us feel alive. Meanwhile, if you don't have those things, you turn to sin to make you feel alive. I also want to offer you that something that men and women all across the world have found really, really helpful in their battle against online lust and pornography. It's something called Covenant Eyes, and I have a 30-day free trial for you if you click the link in my description. Seriously, you should try it. If you're looking to get some sort of accountability software, if you're struggling, then why not? Essentially, you'll send a report of your internet usage to somebody in your life and they'll be able to keep you accountable. So it's not just you alone, but it's bringing somebody else in to make sure that you're going to beat this thing. Now, as much as we talk about boundaries and trying to establish them and reestablish them, Samson didn't. He didn't learn any lessons from those early compromises. In fact, it got worse for him. There's this woman named Delilah, and she was a Philistine, and the Philistines in general, they paid her, they hired her to seduce and manipulate Samson. Obviously, this dude was jacked. This guy was powerful, man, like he had Israel behind him. And so if they could get this woman into a place of intimacy with Samson, then she could get at him. They are using you. Like similar to how Delilah is using Samson, and Samson likes the attention. We'll talk about that. He's liking the attention. He's liking to kind of talk with her, even if she's not, the most, kind or God-fearing woman. He likes the attention. He likes the affection. He likes the way it makes him feel. You similarly may be using online videos, whether on social media or other places, because you like the way they make you feel, these thirst traps, whatever it is, right? And it's not the best thing for you. In a sense, they're using you, but you're willing to put up with it because you like the way it makes you feel. Now, Delilah is really trying to get at Samson here. She's trying to ask him and pry where the source of his strength is. Please tell me where your strength lies and how you might be bound, that one could subdue you. Now, this feels like, a pretty sus question. Like if I were in Samson's shoes, I would be questioning this, but it just goes to show how manipulated he was and how willing to be manipulated he was, honestly. Now, this goes on for a little bit, and he gives her a few different answers about, how to subdue him and what would actually defeat him. And each time, the Philistines were waiting closely by to get the cue to get Samson. But both times he broke free. After this happens for a while, Delilah comes to him with this: "How can you say, 'I love you,' when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and you have not told me where your strength lies." And when she pressed him hard and her words day after day and urged him, his soul was vexed to death, and he told her all of his heart. And he said to her, "A razor has never come upon my head, for I've been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If you shave my head, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak like any other man." She was asking again and again, where is your strength, right? And he's giving her these fake answers. What could have he done in this situation? Well, he could have discerned this, probably as we would have hoped to, and see, this girl is a problem, right? This is kind of crazy. She keeps asking me what's going on, and then she does it to me, and that seems pretty wild. He should get out. He should escape, but he doesn't. Why? Because he likes the attention, because he likes to play games with her. Even after seeing the lie, he likes the affection. But then it says day after day, after Delilah kind of coming to him again and again, trying to find out where his strength lies, he finally gives in. His heart was vexed, and he shared all that was going on with her. What do we learn from this? Remind yourself of the lie that they are promoting, right? Delilah was promoting a lie that she was really into Samson and, and they're going to be together and they're having this fun time. But really in the back of her mind, and I mean, it was pretty obvious, should have been obvious to Samson, that she's doing something nefarious here. He's letting it happen because he likes the way that she makes him feel, but he's letting that happen, and he needs to be aware of the lie that is going on. They're not just a happy couple. That's not what's going on here. Become aware of when you're being broken down, right? Day after day, Delilah goes to him. For you might have pretty good standards and boundaries right now, but yet you're going to places where you're being tempted, you're seeing things, and you're keeping your eyes off it, you're keeping your heart in a good place. But man, that continued repetition of seeing those things it's breaking you down, whether you know it or not. Don't use spiritual maturity as an excuse for entertaining a seductress. Don't use your spiritual maturity. I'm sure, Samson, he thought he was really strong. Obviously, he was very physically strong, but I'm sure he thought he was mentally strong too. Even if he saw what was going on here, he might have said, hey, I know what she's doing here. I'm not going to fall for it. I'm not going to fall into this. He uses spiritual maturity as an excuse for entertaining a seductress. We do this quite a bit. We say, I'm strong in my spiritual walk, so I can watch this movie even if there's suggestive stuff in this, or I'm strong on my spiritual walk, therefore this music doesn't really impact me, or I can watch this TV show because, hey, you know what, I'm pretty strong. Don't make the same mistake as Samson. After he confessed this to Delilah, we kind of all know what happened. His hair was cut. His eyes were gorged. He was taken into captivity. He experienced finally the consequences of his sin. Now, I don't want you to experience this, but I mean, it happens, right? Broken relationships over, addictions and all sorts of that kind of stuff. It's like you will eventually, in some way, experience the consequence of your sin, even if it is secret. And just like Samson, honestly, is that when we are engaged in embracing sin, even if it's secret sin, we're missing out on opportunities that God wants to use us in and the giftings that he's giving us. We're not utilizing to the fullest. Now, Samson goes to the extreme. He loses his gifts. He literally loses it because of his sin. But I want to ask you, have you missed out on opportunities because of an addiction that you had? Right? Have you missed out on using your gifts in ways that God has wanted you to because, man, you were too busy partaking in some kind of sin? Maybe even you didn't pursue a girl that you liked and you thought was really wonderful and godly because you were too consumed with the cheap fakes online. Now, at the end of Samson's story, it's actually kind of wild because he's brought in to entertain the Philistines, essentially. And this is what it says. Then Samson called to the Lord and he said, "O God, please remember me and please strengthen me only this once, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." Then he grabs these pillars that are holding up this massive crowd that is watching him as he's supposed to be entertaining them. And he says, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he bowed with all of his strength, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people who were in it. So the dead of whom he killed were more than those whom he had killed in his entire life. That is a redemption arc. That's pretty sick. Now, while Samson's strength was physical and ultimately flawed, Christ's strength is perfect. Unlike Samson, he didn't compromise any of his boundaries. He lived a perfect life, one that we couldn't live, and ultimately triumphed over sin and death, sacrificing himself, being the greater Samson. While Samson's death brought temporary deliverance, Christ's death brought eternal deliverance. I share this with you because I don't want you to just try to be better, okay, don't make the mistakes that Samson made, be a better person, be more pure. I don't just want that for you. I want you to walk in the Spirit. I want you to come to know the redemption that God has for you because, listen, we've all sinned. We've all fallen short of God's standard, and yet God was perfect in a way that we could never be. But if we put our faith in him, he'll forgive us, and he will give us the strength to walk with him, that he would help us see clearly and be discerning about these things that might try to tempt us. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, I encourage you to subscribe because I'm putting out new content all the time. And until next time, keep pursuing the mission.